What are your best pieces of parenting advice? What would be your answer to this question? I have a lot of expecting parents asking me for my best parenting tips. After all, I have 3 kids and technically a decade of experience. But even after 10 years, I still find it really hard to give a simple answer. Parenting is so messy, and I certainly don't have it all figured out. Still, when I sat down and really thought about it, I realized that there are a couple pieces of wisdom that have come to me over the years from different sources that have truly shaped the way I parent. The advice has helped me through the hardest moments. I come back to those pieces again and again. And today I want to share them with you because parenting is such a crucial part of our lives. And if we want to doula ourselves through it, we better come up with a good way to set our kids up for success while we get to enjoy the process as well. Welcome back to the Doula Johanna podcast. How I feel about myself as a mother changes often, sometimes daily. One moment I feel confident and really connected to my kids, and the next I'm beating myself up for everything I could have done better. The pressure is so real. These years, right now, this is my children's childhood. They will remember this. What I do or don't do, what my husband says and does, this will shape them. And that thought can feel so heavy sometimes. I know I'm not alone in this. So today I want to talk about 6 things that have helped me show up for my kids in a way that feels more intentional. The first thing I want to share is this: love your kids unconditionally. That sounds obvious, right? Of course, we all want to love our children unconditionally, but actually doing it, especially in the messy, exhausting moments of parenting, is so much harder than it seems. When I was pregnant with my first daughter, I read Unconditional Parenting by Alfie Kohn. I think it's the only parenting book that I've read not just once, but 5 times by now. And every time I take away something new. Cohn's central message is this: most of us were raised to believe that love and approval have to be earned through good behavior, through achievements, or through obedience. And whether we realize it or not, we often pass that belief on to our children. When we praise them for being so good, or if we punish them for making mistakes, we send the same message. You are lovable when you meet my expectations. You are less lovable when you don't. That hit me hard. Before I became a mother, I always told myself that I would just follow my instincts. But I've learned the hard way that when I'm stressed or tired or overwhelmed, my instincts aren't worth shit. I default to what I know, to what I was raised with. And for me, that often means yelling. That means forcing compliance or even emotionally blackmailing my kids into cooperation. I don't say that lightly. It's hard to admit. And I want to be clear. My childhood wasn't awful. My parents did their best with the knowledge they had. But they too grew up in a world where love often felt very conditional. My mother is born in 1946. She expected me to be self-sufficient and excel in school. If I scored 90% on a test, she'd ask why I didn't get 100%. It made me feel like I was never enough, like love had to be earned through perfection. My father, on the other hand, went the opposite route. He was determined to break the cycle of abuse that he experienced as a child. So he never hit us, and he constantly praised me for being good or for being kind and for being so reliable and sensible. And even though it was well intended, it left me feeling like I had to be that person, that sensible, nice, good girl to deserve his love. And that if I failed or if I made a mistake, I might lose his approval. And that's exactly what the Alfie Kohn book helped me see. Praise and punishment are just 2 sides of the same coin. Both teach our children that love is something they have to work for, when what they really need is to feel loved no matter what. Now, let me be clear. I believe in boundaries. Unconditional love doesn't mean no limits, not at all. It doesn't mean that I would let my child hit me or disrespect me, but it does mean that I will try to show them, even though I will not let you hurt me or your sibling, there is nothing you can do that will ever make me stop loving you. And that's where the real work of parenting begins. No matter what I do, I will ask myself the question, is what I'm saying to them, is what I'm showing them, is how I am behaving towards them, showing them that I love them no matter what, no matter if their room looks like shit, no matter if they are like fighting with their sibling. It's so important to me that they know that nothing they can do will make them lose my love. I still have rules in this house. I still have boundaries, but I want them to always know that they are loved. They don't have to do anything to be loved. Just because they are, just because they exist, they will always be deserving of my love, unconditionally. Another piece of advice that has really stuck with me over the years is say yes as much as I can. Basically, giving my kids as much freedom as is safe and as much as I can personally handle on a given day. This is part of the hand-in-hand parenting approach as described in Patty Whiffler's book, Listen. Hand-in-hand parenting emphasizes connection-based discipline, which means prioritizing emotional connection over control. I've realized that the more I say yes to my kids when I can, the more likely they are to say yes to me when I need their cooperation. When I'm constantly shutting them down with a no, they will start doing the same thing to me. That doesn't mean that I say yes to everything. I have limits, and I'm definitely not the kind of mom who's like, sure, let's do finger painting on the white couch. But for example, if they will ask me, can we do watercolors like just 5 minutes before dinner? Everything inside me wants to say, ugh, no, because I'm already stretched thin. But I know by now that if I let them do their watercolors, they will be so inspired and happy that later, through bedtime, they will be so much more happy and in a better mood and more cooperative that it will save me time in the long run. Therefore, I really try to create an environment where saying yes is easier for me. Almost everything they want to do is easier for me to say yes to when we are outside. If they want to play with mud and clay and we are in the garden or in the park, no big deal. It's little things like that shifting the circumstances instead of defaulting to no, that really helped us build a much better connection. And then there are all those little decisions that really don't affect me at all, except maybe my ego, where I try to say yes more often. Like clothes, for example. All 3 of my kids wanted to dress themselves early on, before their 2nd birthday. And let me tell you, their outfit choices have been creative, to say the least. So for a while, I worried what people might think, or that they think that I'm neglecting my kids because they are running around in, I don't know, a tutu and rubber boots and look like little homeless people in the middle of summer. But I let go of that. As long as they're somewhat dressed for the weather and comfortable, why should I care? What I really believe is that people only get good at making good choices by actually making them. If I control everything, how are they supposed to learn? Of course, they know when it comes to safety, hygiene, and health. My husband and I are calling the shots. But in everything else, I try to step back and let them figure things out. And honestly, it's been so freeing for them and for me. Now, you might be thinking that I sound like a pretty lenient parent so far, but let me be clear, I love boundaries. I think they are absolutely crucial for kids. And if I could give you just one piece of advice when it comes to setting them, it would be this. If you are clear on something, let your children know and stand by it. Hold that boundary. Kids are incredibly perceptive. They can feel when we are unsure, when we're hesitating, or when we're just kind of making up the rules on the spot. And honestly, that's normal, right? We're human and flexibility is a good thing. If my kids, for example, will ask for a second ice cream, for example, on a really hot summer day, I might feel like I should say no. But if I'm not actually convinced myself, I give them space for negotiation. And let me tell you, my kids are little lawyers. They'll throw out every argument in the book. And sometimes they will be very convincing and I will think, why not? And I'll let them have it. But there are times when I am very clear, like if we've already had cake and ice cream and they ask for more. That's a firm no for me, and my kids feel the difference. They might test the waters for a second or two, but when I hold my ground with confidence, they usually move on pretty quickly. Of course, that doesn't mean they're always happy about it. Sometimes, especially when they were younger, they'd have big feelings about not getting what they wanted. And that's okay. I don't try to shut them down. I just listen and let them be upset. Patty Whiffler calls this stay listening. So instead of dismissing or fixing their feelings, we just hold space for them and we let them feel those feelings. I have to admit, one of the hardest situations for me when I'm around other families is to watch a parent say no to their child and then the child starts whining. And after 40 minutes of drawn out misery, the parent finally gives in. And I'm just sitting there thinking, please, if you're going to say yes anyway, just do it right away and save everyone else the frustration. I found those situations hard to handle. So listen, I get it though. We all get worn down sometimes. But here's the thing. Kids aren't being manipulative when they push against a boundary. They're just trying to understand where the limit actually is. And when we constantly waver, it doesn't make them feel more loved or empowered. It makes the world feel unpredictable. They need us grown-ups to be the grown-ups and take the responsibility. Kids need to know that we as their parents are strong enough to handle their disappointment, that we can hold a boundary with kindness and confidence. Because if we can't, who will? The third piece of advice I want to share today, I learned from my dear friend Elise. She introduced me to a parenting philosophy called Visible Child. And one thing I really loved about it was the idea of always assuming best intentions. The idea of assuming best intentions is a core principle in Visible Child. The parenting approach developed by Robin Einzig, I think that's how you pronounce her name. It emphasizes respecting children as whole people and recognizing their behaviors as communication rather than manipulation. Looking back, I think as a child, I often felt like my mother assumed the worst of me and my intentions. And honestly, I catch myself doing the same thing with my daughters. When I see them fighting and hitting each other, my immediate reaction is to assume that they are just being mean, or even worse, brutally calculating. But when I take a step back, I realize that's almost never the case. More often than not, one of their big needs isn't being met. They are probably hungry or tired or just craving connection. And I've noticed that so many so-called bad behaviors magically disappear after a snack, a nap, or a long cuddle. That's why it breaks my heart when I hear myself snapping, "You're only doing this to get attention." Because, well, of course they are, right? There are 3 of them and about 1,000 other things that is pulling my attention away from them. How could they not try to get it? Which brings me to another piece of advice that changed my parenting game. Number 4, give your children special time. Especially if you have more than one child, make it a point to schedule one-on-one time with each of them. Every once in a while, I manage to plan a whole day with just one of my kids, which is amazing for really filling their cup. But yeah, that doesn't happen often. So we rely on special time instead. Special time is just a small, intentional pocket of time where I put my phone away and give my full attention to one child. Usually I need another grown-up to watch the other two, but even 10 to 15 minutes can already make a huge difference. Sometimes they want to play a board game with me, or read a book that their siblings don't like, or just have me watch them do their thing. And what really makes me so happy is that at this point, my kids actually ask for special time themselves, which is so wonderful. It's still a challenge to make it happen consistently, but when I do, I can feel the shift in our connection immediately, and it's so worth it. The last piece of advice I received from the visible child approach that really struck me is repair when you mess up. Our kids don't need us to be perfect, but they do need to see us take responsibility when we've mistreated them. I wish I could say that I never scream at my kids anymore, or that I always stay calm when they are upset. But unfortunately, I still get triggered often, and sometimes I behave super poorly around them. And honestly, when that happens, I feel so much guilt and so much shame that it can be hard to move on. I sometimes get so stuck in this place where I don't want to let myself out of the doghouse like ever again. But then I remind myself that fucking up is part of being human. We're not robots, we're parents, and we're just doing our best. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking they should be perfect or to hate themselves when they mess up in the future. It's natural to make mistakes, for them and also for me. What's really important is what we do after we mess up. And this is where repairing comes in. Once I've calmed down and taken a moment to reflect, I make a conscious effort to go to my kids and say, hey, I'm really sorry for how I acted earlier. I shouldn't have screamed at you. It wasn't your fault. I was feeling overwhelmed, but that's not an excuse for my behavior. I let them know that I understand the impact of my actions and that I'm committed to doing better next time. Repairing doesn't erase the mistake, but it helps rebuild the connection. In the visible child approach, the idea is that kids need to see us owning our mistakes in a real, genuine way. It teaches them that it's okay to mess up. And more importantly, it shows them that we can always reconnect. Repairing is not about perfection, but about taking responsibility and showing empathy, which builds trust and emotional intelligence. I think this is so important because it teaches my kids that no one is perfect and we can all grow, reflect, and work on our emotional reactions. This process shows them how to take responsibility for their own mistakes one day without shame or guilt, and how to reconnect after an emotional bump in the road. Okay, those were my top 6. Let me quickly recap them for you one more time. Number 1. Let them know they are loved unconditionally. Your love is not based on their behavior. It's always there, no matter what. Number 2, say yes as much as you can and make that as easy for you as possible. Number 3, hold your boundaries. When you do say no, stand by it with compassion, but without wavering. Number 4, assume best intentions. If they are giving you a hard time, they are probably having a hard time. Most likely they need something: clarity, connection, food, rest. Number 5, special time. Give them your full attention for 10 to 15 minutes without your phone. And number 6, repair when you mess up. We all mess up, and that's okay. Own your mistakes, apologize, and show your kids that making amends is part of being human. And here's the most important takeaway. Be kind to yourself. I am not great at this, but I am learning. Parenting is fucking hard, and it's okay to not have it all together. If you didn't get a lot of empathy or understanding when you were growing up, it's completely normal that it can be hard to not get triggered by your kids now. That's why it's so important to nurture our own inner child, the one who may have felt unheard, neglected, or misunderstood, and start offering yourself the same compassion you want to extend to your children. But beyond just being kind to ourselves, we also need to take responsibility for our own well-being. Our kids are not responsible for how we feel about ourselves. That's on us. Every day, we can doula ourselves through our hard moments, just like we nurture our kids through their hard moments. If you find yourself constantly snapping at your kids or feeling short-fused, take a moment to reflect. What do I need? Do I need a snack? Do I need a nap? A hug? Do I need more support from the others around me? The other grown-ups, I mean. Or do I need time for therapy to heal my own wounds? Or maybe should I just go to bed at 9 p.m. for a few nights in a row? Whatever it is, I commit to filling my own cup so that I can show up as the relaxed, patient parent I want to be tomorrow. The truth is, when we take care of ourselves, emotionally, mentally, and physically, our kids' behaviors often improve too. They pick up on our energy, on our mood, and our own sense of regulation. When we are more in tune with our own needs, we're able to be more present for them. So I want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself, as you would with your own child. If you know someone who would benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with them. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you for listening in. Take care and be your own life doula.